The hot button issue this week is what happened with the Prime Minister's convoy between Bhatinda and Firozpur. It's a short highway ride, 111 kilometers. In Firozpur, he was headed for the Indian enclave of Hosseiniwala across the Satluj River. That is where the memorial for Bhagat Singh, Rajguru, and Sukhdev is located, because that is the spot that the British had chosen to execute them, to hang them. Now we know what happened, all the stuff that happened. There was obviously a big security lapse, and then politics broke out. Because you know what, in a democracy, ultimately everything boils down to politics. So sometimes we can be irritated, we can be judgmental about it, but everything is about politics in a democracy, as we say at the print all the time, including on our merchandise, because politics matters. And you know what? For us to bring the news of politics, our understanding of politics, as fair as possible and as well informed as possible, we need your help. And that help comes to us by way of your paid subscriptions. So thank you very much for keeping us going, particularly now when we are in a new phase of the pandemic. Our reporters are out across the country. It costs a lot of money to carry out field reporting. So please do keep subscribing. Please do keep taking paid subscriptions. And if you've taken one, please renew it. And please don't bother taking monthly subscriptions right now, because somehow Reserve Bank of India does not like that very much. So take one-time subscriptions, quarterly subscriptions, annual subscriptions, and obviously if you live overseas, then there is no restriction. Please take any kind of subscription, but you want fair, unhyphenated, correct news and understanding from India, please pay for it. That is the important thing. So once again, getting back to the road between Bhatinda and Firozpur. What happened? Now, your understanding of what exactly happened with the Prime Minister's convoy on the highway between Bhatinda and Firozpur, I say in this week's National Interest, probably depends on which side of the political divide are you on. It may even depend to some extent on whether you belong to Punjab or not. Because if you're outside Punjab, you tend to blame the state of Punjab and Punjabis a bit more. If you are in Punjab, then you tend to get defensive and say, why are you calling names to us Punjabis? So this has now become a very polarized issue. Now there are facts, there are pictures, there are amateur videos, there are charges and counter charges, range from assassination plan, a devious assassination plan, to shamming by the Prime Minister and his people because of poor crowd turnout at the rally in Hussainiwala. And then there are the inevitable conspiracy theories. Now, here are the facts as we know them, or what we think we know. First, there was a massive, unforgivable failure of security that nobody can deny. It isn't just that the security protocol, so well set over the decades as to be carved in stone and ossified by now, was broken. It is also what followed once the Prime Minister's vehicle or Prime Minister's convoy was stranded on the flyover. It was parked, his vehicle was parked for several fraught minutes right next to the parapet, Mudair as we say, parapet on the flank of the flyover, which means it was fully visible to anybody below on the ground, to anybody on a tree, anybody on a building if there was building close by. So this was a very dangerous period for him. Now, normally it should have been in the middle of the highway. When the Prime Minister of the country is traveling with SPG and has to suddenly make an unplanned stop, it is not necessary. In fact, the drill is not for the driver to veer to the left and park on the correct side, the left side. The drill should be for the Prime Minister's car to be parked in the middle, and for other cars, the SPG cars, then to be giving it cover from all sides. Nobody is going to give our Prime Minister of India, Chalan for parking in the wrong part of the highway. The highway belongs to him at a time when the motorcade is moving. Now, the other thing that you see in many of these visuals is that, yes, SPG people very smartly turned out as they usually are. They look very impressive like the movies. They all came out to protect his car and the Prime Minister, but they were seen more on the flanks than in the front. It did look like the front was exposed for some time. So the first protocol breach was that the highway was not sanitized. That was the Punjab Police's job. That is the drill for decades. Very often you see, if you're going on a road where a VIP may be going. Much before that, you will see cops at every 20, 30, 50 yards standing looking at the other side of the road. That's called sanitizing the road. And also, we know what happens in our cities when the VVIP movement is taking place. We say route lag gaya hai, which means traffic is blocked in that area. So the VVIP or the high security risk person can then have a free, unhindered, unimpeded passage. The question is, if this is the state police's job, state government's job, then did the Punjab police know that the Prime Minister was taking this highway because the weather was bad and his helicopter wasn't taking off from Patinda airport. Patinda is a proper airport now. A scheduled flight also lands there from Delhi, an Udan flight. So once they knew that the helicopter was not taking off, did Punjab police know that his motorcade was going on this highway or not? That is the first question. The second question is, if they knew it, why did they not sanitize the road? If they failed to sanitize the road, despite the fact that they knew the Prime Minister was traveling there, then it is incompetence to begin with. But if they did not even know the Prime Minister was driving to Husainiwala instead of flying, this isn't incompetence. This is being asleep on the job. Now we know the brass of the Chambas Punjab Police, as they like to call Daredevil Punjab Police in those parts, like their siesta, right? But this was too early for siesta. This was early in the day. Prime ministerial movement was taking place. Finally, if they knew about the convoy, but protesters had already collected there, as is being said in their defense, somebody needs to find out whether it was conveyed promptly to the SPG. Because if it wasn't, then it's Punjab Police's big mistake. But if it was conveyed, then you have to look for answers towards the SPG. These are important questions. Now, the answer to this will point us to which conspiracy theory might be more plausible. The first is the BJP's, that the Congress government in the state was deliberately exposing the Prime Minister to an assassination attempt. The second is the Congress's, that minutes earlier the Prime Minister was told that the crowd at the rally he was headed for was rather sparse, which it was. So he was too embarrassed to go and had a drama staged instead. These are the two conspiracy theories, or the two rival conspiracy theories. Now, are we making too many assumptions here? I beg to plead that we are not. Because no less than a full cabinet minister of the Modi government, that is Giriraj Singh, has said there was a plot to assassinate Narendra Modi, either using a high caliber, long distance, long range rifle or a drone. The Prime Minister also visited Rashtrapati Bhavan promptly on his return to Delhi to apprise the President, who expressed his concern in a tweet as well. And from the other side, both Chief Minister Charanjit Singh Channi and PCC Chief Navjot Singh Sidhu have called it a play-acted sham because of poor crowd. So we are not jumping to any conclusions without any basis. These are things that both sides, at either side, has said. Based on the facts that we know, we can say that this was a national embarrassment. That no modern nation, least of all India with its history of political assassinations, leaves its chief executive exposed like this. But also that there was no assassination plan. For heaven's sake, I'm saying this. There was no assassination plan. You can see it from all the facts available to you. Even an intending assassin would have to be frightfully fortunate to be loitering exactly in the same place at that moment. There were no drones anywhere in sight. This kind of fancy stuff does not even happen. This kind of coincidences do not even happen in cheap Bollywood movies or some of the cheaper OTT thriller types. It doesn't happen like that. The assumption we can draw from this, on the other hand, is that what we saw was an incredible security failure on the part of both the state police and the SPG. It underlines the fact that over time, all security protocols become mechanical and people start following them, also become robotic. And when something goes wrong, they simply don't know immediately what to do. Change and improvement is constantly needed. We also see amateur videos where SPG men open the doors of the Prime Minister's car twice or thrice, if I remember correctly. And at one point, some fans, these obviously look like BJP workers, also get close to the car, and one of them also offers the Prime Minister a gift. It looks like an ornate ceremonial kind of cap, and the Prime Minister, it seems from these videos, accepts it. Now, this isn't from any VVIP security blue book. Such a thing is never allowed by the security detail of any VVIP in the world. The conclusion is the old one. So we come to a conclusion, and that conclusion is the old one. Never waste time looking for conspiracies for what can be fully explained as pure incompetence, which it seems it was in this case, by both state police and the SPG. Now, politicians, especially those in power, are the most endangered people, particularly in a country like ours with a history of political assassinations. Nathuram Godse provided a shattering prelude to the foundation of the Republic by assassinating Mahatma Gandhi. In early 1965, a few months after his resignation as Punjab's almighty Chief Minister, Pratap Singh Kairo was assassinated on the Grand Trunk Road just outside of Delhi in what would be Sonipat district of Haryana now, not far from where you turn, say, from Ashoka University on one side and Jindal University on the other, somewhere around there, near a village called Rasoi. He was assassinated. Punjab, in fact, has had the dubious distinction of seeing two chief ministers, one former, one serving, being assassinated. Beant Singh in 1995 was the second one. Bihar saw Union Railway Minister Lalit Narayan Mishra bombed at Samastipur in 1975. The decade of the 1980s was also the most perilous for our public figures, as several public figures were consumed by terrorism. These included Indira Gandhi in 1984, Rajiv Gandhi just after the decade got underway in 1991. Rajiv Gandhi, in fact, had already had a history of 3 attempts on his life as Prime Minister. The first, Washington, 14th May 1985, that is when 2 or 3 Sikhs hiding inside a tree were caught by the FBI, which foiled the plot. Another plot was foiled by British police. That was at Leicester in June 1986. On the same year, on Gandhi Jayanti, 2nd October, a somewhat farcical attempt at Rajghat was made as Rajiv emerged after his prayers at Bapu's Samadhi. As he was coming out, 3 shots rang out. They seemed to be aimed nowhere. And the police then hauled down a man called Karamjit Singh from a tree with his homemade firearm, cruder than your usual Hindi heartland katta. It didn't look like it could be fired anywhere at a specific target. It was more a tamancha to make noise than a gun to shoot at somebody. But this incident did take place. The next attempt on Rajiv, however, was anything but farcical. On 30th July 1987, just after persuading or forcing or arm twisting both J.R. Jayawardene, the president of Sri Lanka, and Velupillai Prabhakaran, the chief of the Tigers, the chief of the LTTE, persuading both of them to sign a peace agreement. Rajiv Gandhi was inspecting a guard of honor in Colombo, where a naval rating called Vijayamani Vijita Rohana de Silva swung his rifle at him. Fortunately, the rifle was unloaded, so he physically tried to hit him, to club him with the rifle. And you've seen those pictures and videos of Rajiv trying to avoid him. Now, that was immediately reminiscent of the Anwar Sadat assassination in a parade just like that in 1981 in Cairo. Now, Mrs. Gandhi's assassination had led to the formation of the SPG, Special Protection Group. That was before Rajiv came to power, because she was killed, she was assassinated by 2 of her own security guards drawn from the police. And the understanding then was that, look, the Prime Minister of the country, or people who are really threatened, they need a specialized protection force where antecedents of everybody are checked all the time. So, Rajiv Gandhi was actually SPG's first ward, or first protectee, as they say. And with each attempt on him, SPG improved its methods because they were learning on the job. The result was a very, very formidable, world-class VVIP security force, modeled a little bit on the Secret Service of the US President. The reason the Gandhi family believes, this is the reason the Gandhi family believes that VP Singh and Chandrasekhar governments erred in denying Rajiv the SPG, even though he was not in power then. But how safe is the presumption that just the continued presence of the SPG would have saved Rajiv from that young woman with a smile on her face and a bomb belt around her waist? A day before Siri Perumbudur, Arun Puri, editor of India Today, where I then worked in 1991, and I caught up with Rajiv Gandhi campaigning in Varanasi. We were aghast to see him mixing freely with crowds, getting very close to them, letting crowds come to him, touch him also. Many threw garlands and bouquets at him as he appeared on the stage at a late night rally in Varanasi. And he, instead of ducking, or the security man, instead of coming in the way, he actually joyously caught them or picked them up and threw them, tossed them back at the crowd. He was enjoying the fact that he could be close to the crowds. We had also caught up with Rajiv at a pit stop at a tiny dhaba on the road between Buxar in Bihar and Varanasi. In fact, I wrote a small article on that in India Today magazine, which I'll try and share with you if I can find it on the archives. I was too junior at that point to have known him. Arun knew him very well because they were in the same school, Doon school around the same time. And he raised the question over his being rather cavalier with his security. Rajiv Gandhi said something like his feedback was that he had become too distant from people. So he had to reach out, never mind the warnings. He was a man of the people and wanted to be seen as one. So the obvious conclusion, therefore, is that public figures, especially in political campaign seasons, election campaign seasons, have that irresistible urge and pressure to be seen with the people. Would an SPG team have prevailed upon Rajiv Gandhi not to expose himself to unsanitized, quote unquote, fans in Siripurbudur? It would depend entirely on how professional they were and how willing they were to say no to the boss, because that is the key thing. The answer would be, once again, the answer would be only if the officers in charge were professional enough not to be over by the stature of the protectee. You have to force the boss to listen. That's the most important part of VVIP security. Jumping to the other side of this fence, of course, there are political farces and dramas also. We have a history of that as well. In the name of assassination attempts in India, these have happened in our lifetimes. The most famous or infamous one in our history is now forgotten, but I'll remind you all of it. On 15th March 1977, a day before, it was to be a Wednesday in 1977 March, the day before that Wednesday, when 300 constituencies in Indian Parliament, Lok Sabha, were going to the polls, most of these were in Hindi heartland. It looked like Congress, for the first time, was looking down the barrel that they were going to lose. They were facing defeat. Headlines came out the next morning that somebody had fired 3 shots at Sanjay Gandhi's car at a place not far from Amethi. Now, from the moment that story came out, everybody knew it was a farce. It was dismissed as a farce. Nobody was caught. Not even a serious enough complaint was filed. In fact, the DM of the district at that point, Sultanpur, was quoted as saying that some aides of Sanjay Gandhi came to complain. But nothing really happened. The whole world knew it was a farce. In fact, I was researching on it. I was Googling it and I found an article from the Washington Post. Somehow I did not find that much from Indian media as well. I found an article in the Washington Post where even the headline says something like this, basically saying that this was play acting before the polling day because the Congress knew they were in trouble. Now, this was a cheap trick that failed. So the fact is that this kind of stuff also happens. Coming back to our theme of the stranded PM on the highway flyover, a security failure has to be accepted and correctives must be put in. Any Prime Minister's security can't be an issue for political polarization or point scoring. With the information available yet, I will close this argument with one final point, that in this event, it is the Indian Air Force that showed true professionalism, telling the boss it wasn't going to fly in that weather. You can see what level of professionalism and moral courage it takes to say no to your prime minister. The same pilots may be flying in weather 10 times worse than that in Siachen and places like that. But right now, their responsibility was the prime minister. They had their principles, their maximas, and their minimas provided to them, and they were not going to override those principles because of the stature of their passenger. So you can see this is the kind of professionalism and moral courage it takes to say no, prime minister. Only things like this can keep him safe.